I found out my own father thought I was a failure and a burden through a video my aunt sent me. And the worst part was that, at the exact moment he was saying those words, I was quietly paying off his loans so he wouldn't lose his house. I still remember staring at my phone, my hands shaking, my chest tight, replaying his voice again and again just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. He was laughing, relaxed, comfortable, like he was talking about a stranger he despised, not his own child. So tell me honestly, before you judge me for anything that comes next, was I wrong for what I eventually did? Or would you have done the same if you were in my place? That video didn't just hurt me. It cracked something open inside me that I had been holding together for years. I need to take you back to the beginning so you can understand why that single message from my aunt changed everything. Growing up, my dad was always a complicated man. From the outside, people thought he was respectable, hardworking, the kind of father who did his best. Inside our house, though, love always felt conditional. I was the kid who could never quite measure up. My grades were never good enough. My career choices were always questioned. And every small mistake was treated like proof that I would never become anything worthwhile. Still, I chased his approval like a fool. I thought if I just worked harder, sacrificed more, one day he'd look at me with pride instead of disappointment. My mom passed away when I was young, and after that, my dad became my whole world, whether I liked it or not. He worked long hours, came home exhausted, and expected silence, obedience, and gratitude. I learned early not to ask for much. If I needed something, I felt guilty. If I wanted something, I felt selfish. My aunt, his sister, was around a lot back then. She was loud, judgmental, and had a way of smiling at you while quietly tearing you apart. She and my dad were close, bonded over complaining about everyone else in the family. Even as a kid, I could tell she didn't like me much, but I never understood why. As I got older, I tried to build my own life. I moved out, worked multiple jobs, went through failures and small wins like anyone else. Nothing I did ever seemed to impress my dad. When I got my first real job, he said it was just average. When I got promoted, he said, "Don't get too comfortable." When I struggled, he treated it like confirmation of his worst fears about me. Still, I kept showing up. I called him, checked on him, helped him whenever he asked. I told myself that family is family, and you don't abandon your parent just because they're difficult. Then things started going downhill for him financially. He had always been bad with money, but pride kept him from admitting it. He took out loans to cover other loans, borrowed from friends, maxed out credit cards. Eventually, he came to me. I remember that conversation so clearly. He sounded small on the phone, embarrassed, and for once, vulnerable. He said he was behind on payments and the bank was threatening action. He didn't ask directly, but it was obvious what he wanted. I hesitated, not because I didn't care, but because I was barely stable myself. Still, something in me couldn't say no. This was my dad. The same man who criticized me constantly? Yes, but also the man who raised me after my mom died. So, I agreed to help. What he didn't know was how much I had to give up to do that. I cut back on everything. I stopped going out, delayed my own plans, drained savings I had been building for years. Every month, I quietly transferred money to cover his loans. I didn't tell him the full extent because I didn't want him to feel guilty or proud. I just wanted him safe, housed. Okay. Part of me also hoped that maybe, just maybe, if he knew I was responsible enough to carry his financial mess, he'd finally see me differently. Around this time, my aunt started acting strange. She'd call more often, asking casual questions about my job, my finances, my relationship with my dad. I didn't think much of it. I assumed she was just being nosy, which was normal for her. What I didn't know was that she was spending a lot of time at my dad's house, especially when I wasn't around. They'd sit together, drink tea, and talk. About me. I didn't find that out until later, but looking back, all the signs were there. The day I received the video started like any other. I was at work, exhausted, checking my phone during a break when I saw a message from my aunt. No context. Just a video file. I remember feeling a flicker of confusion, but nothing more. I thought maybe it was something random, some family nonsense. I put my headphones in and hit play. At first, it was shaky footage of my dad's living room. I could hear my aunt's voice faintly, laughing. Then, my dad started talking. He didn't know he was being recorded, or maybe he didn't care. He was ranting. Complaining about his life, his stress, his ungrateful child. Then, he said my name. My full name. And then the words that still echo in my head. They're a complete failure. Always have been. Honestly, they're more of a burden than anything else. I don't know what I did to deserve a child like that. My aunt laughed and added something like, "You're too soft on them." And he agreed. He talked about how I owed him, how I should be doing more, how I was lucky he even tolerated me. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I replayed it, hoping I'd misheard. I hadn't. This wasn't said in anger during a fight. This was casual cruelty. This was how he spoke about me when he thought I wasn't listening. I paused the video and stared at my reflection in the black screen of my phone. I felt stupid. Naive. Betrayed in a way that's hard to explain unless it's happened to you. I was paying his debts. I was sacrificing my future. And this was who I was to him. I didn't respond to my aunt right away. I couldn't. I sat there, numb, while messages from work piled up. That night, I went home and cried harder than I had in years. Not loud, dramatic crying. Quiet, broken crying where your chest hurts and your eyes burn. I kept thinking about every time I defended him to friends. Every excuse I made for his behavior. Every time I blamed myself for not being enough. That video destroyed the last excuse I had left. The next day, my aunt finally messaged again. She said something like, "I thought you should know what he really thinks." No apology. No explanation. Just that. That's when the anger started to replace the shock. Why now? Why send me this? Was she trying to help me, or was she trying to hurt me? Later, I realized it didn't matter. The damage was done. I confronted my dad a few days later. I didn't mention the video right away. I wanted to see him, hear him, understand if there was any remorse hiding somewhere. We sat in his living room, the same one from the video. He complained about money, about stress, about how hard his life was. At one point, he looked at me and said, "You know, you should be doing more to help. I did everything for you." Something in me snapped. I told him I knew what he said about me. I told him about the video. His reaction was worse than anything I imagined. He didn't apologize. He didn't deny it either. He shrugged and said, "Well, it's not like it's a lie." He told me I was too sensitive, that I should be grateful he was honest. That parents are allowed to be disappointed. My aunt, he said, shouldn't have sent the video. But the words themselves, he stood by them. In that moment, I felt something die inside me. Not explode, just quietly shut down. I left his house without another word. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty walking away. I felt empty, yes, but also strangely clear. Over the next few days, I kept paying the loans because everything was already set up automatically. Every payment notification felt like a slap in the face. I started asking myself questions I had avoided for years. Why was I doing this? For love, for approval, for a version of my father that maybe never existed. So that's where I was. That was the situation I found myself in. A parent who openly despised me. An aunt who exposed him in the cruelest way possible. And a financial lifeline that only I was holding. Before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you the decision that changed everything, I want you to pause for a second and think about what you would have done if you discovered your parent secretly saw you as a burden while you were sacrificing your own life for them. Would you keep helping? Or would you finally choose yourself? Because in the next part of this story, I made a choice. And no matter how much time passes, others still wonder if it made me strong or heartless. After asking myself that question over and over, after replaying that video so many times, I could recite my dad's insults word for word. I finally reached a point where something inside me hardened. It wasn't rage. Not exactly. It was clarity. A cold, sharp understanding that if I didn't choose myself now, I never would. I remember sitting on my bed late one night, laptop open, bank app glowing in the dark, staring at the automatic payments, scheduled for the next 6 months. Each one represented another piece of my life I was giving away to someone who didn't even respect me. My hands hovered over the screen, trembling, while my mind argued with itself. He's still your father. You'll regret this. What kind of person abandons their own parent? But then another voice, quieter but stronger, asked, what kind of parent calls their child a failure and a burden while living off their money? I didn't cancel the payments that night. Not yet. I needed time. I needed to know I wasn't acting purely out of hurt. Over the next few weeks, I watched my dad more carefully. I noticed how easily he complained about me to others, how he took my help for granted, how he never once asked how I was managing. Every interaction confirmed what that video had already shown me. I wasn't a love child in his eyes. I was a resource, a tool. And once that realization settled in, it became impossible to ignore. My aunt didn't disappear either. She kept calling, pretending to check on me. At first, I avoided her, but eventually I answered. She acted sympathetic, told me she always thought my dad was too harsh, said things like, "You didn't deserve to hear that." But there was something off about her tone, like she was enjoying the chaos she'd caused. During one call, she casually mentioned how stressed my dad was about money again, how worried he was about losing the house. That's when I understood her role more clearly. She hadn't sent me that video out of kindness. She sent it to stir things up, to create drama. Maybe even to push me into backing out so she could step in as the savior. Or maybe she just wanted to hurt me. Either way, I stopped trusting her completely. The breaking point came when my dad called me one afternoon, furious. He said one of his loan payments was late. I checked immediately and realized there had been a banking delay. Nothing serious. I tried to explain, but he cut me off and started yelling. He said I was irresponsible, that I was proving once again how unreliable I was, that he couldn't count on me for anything. Something inside me snapped again, but this time it didn't break, it steadied. I calmly told him the payment would go through within 24 hours. He scoffed and said, "You always mess things up." When the call ended, I stared at my phone and felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no fear, just resolve. That night, I canceled the automatic payments. It wasn't dramatic. No music, no tears. Just a few taps on a screen. When the confirmation message appeared, I felt a strange mix of relief and terror. Relief, because I had finally stopped bleeding myself dry for someone who despised me. Terror, because I knew what would come next. And I was right. The fallout was immediate. 2 days later, my dad called, screaming. He accused me of betrayal, of abandoning him, of ruining his life. He said I was selfish, ungrateful, heartless. I listened quietly until he ran out of breath. Then, For the first time in my life, I told him the truth. I told him I knew exactly how he felt about me. I told him I had heard every word. I told him I wasn't going to support someone who saw me as a burden. He tried to backtrack then, said I was taking things out of context, that everyone vents sometimes. I reminded him that he had stood by those words when confronted. He went silent for a moment, then said, "So you're really going to do this to me?" And I replied, "No. You did this to yourself." He hung up. The next few weeks were hell. Family members started calling. Some were confused, others angry. My aunt, of course, played innocent, telling everyone she had no idea things would escalate like this. She painted herself as the messenger, who had simply revealed the truth. My dad told anyone who would listen that I had abandoned him, that I was cruel and ungrateful, that after everything he'd done for me, I left him to suffer. Not once did he mention the video. Not once did he mention what he'd said about me. I learned quickly how easily people accept one-sided stories, especially when they come from a parent. For a while, I doubted myself. Late at night, I'd lie awake imagining worst-case scenarios. What if he really lost the house? What if something happened to him and I was blamed forever? But every time guilt crept in, I reminded myself of the facts. He wasn't homeless. He had options. He had other family members, including the aunt who seemed so invested in his life. And most importantly, he had made a choice long before I did. He chose contempt over compassion. I was just responding to it. Months passed. Slowly, the noise died down. My dad stopped calling. My aunt stopped pretending to care once. She realized I wasn't playing along anymore. And something unexpected happened. I started breathing again. With the money I wasn't sending away every month, I paid off my own debts. I slept better. I laughed more. I stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was living for myself instead of trying to earn love from someone who would never give it. About 6 months later, I ran into my dad by chance at a grocery store. He looked older, smaller. For a moment, my heart twisted with something like sadness. He saw me and hesitated, then walked over. The conversation was awkward and short. He told me he'd managed to work something out with the bank. He didn't apologize. He didn't acknowledge the past. He just said, "I hope you're happy." I looked at him and realized something important. I didn't need his validation anymore. I simply said, "I am," and walked away. People sometimes ask me if I regret cutting him off financially, if I feel bad, if I'd do it differently now. The truth is complicated. I regret that my father is the kind of man who could say those things about his own child. I regret that I spent so many years believing I had to earn love through sacrifice. But I don't regret choosing myself. Not anymore. That video broke me. But it also freed me. It forced me to see the truth without filters or excuses. And while it still hurts to know what my father really thinks of me, it hurts less than continuing to live for someone who saw me as nothing but a burden. So that's the end of it. That's the whole messy, painful story. If you were on my side, if you think I was right to finally walk away, like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this, because trust me, I have learned that family doesn't always mean loyalty, and love should never come at the cost of your self-worth. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments. I read them all. I'll see you in the next story.